For those of us who grew up in the early 2000s, there are many staples of that era that bring a strong sense of nostalgia. Flip phones, iPods, early MySpace, and LimeWire. But for many, the memories of that decade are not so pleasant, filled instead with missing children, stagnant cold cases, and a longing for answers. In today's episode, we'll be discussing these topics as we explore 3 harrowing cases from the 2000s that are still unsolved. But first, I'd like to thank Magellan TV for sponsoring today's episode. Cold Case Detective has been working with Magellan TV for the last year, and we are thrilled to have been sponsored by them again, a true hidden gem in streaming services and one of the highest rated documentary streaming apps on Google Play. If you haven't heard about their fascinating documentaries and bingeable TV shows, then you've missed out. Magellan TV is always in 4K, never has ads, and goes far beyond the realms of true crime to do deep dives into other topics like space, history, and the supernatural. No matter what your interests, Magellan TV has a show for you. And it's one of the best value premium documentary streaming services in both price and quality, having the best and largest collection of true crime shows anywhere. This week, we're highlighting the documentary Art Trafficking, a Grey Market, a 53-minute deep dive into one of the world's top black markets. Sitting at number 3 between drugs and arms trafficking, the antiquities market is incredibly lucrative, generating billions of dollars each year. Precious objects that have been dug up without permission on secretive digs make their way into our museums and onto the artificial art market. The main victims are the nations that have lost their invaluable artifacts that show their history and culture, and now they're speaking up and demanding those stolen items be returned to their rightful owners. The documentary is a fascinating insight into how damaging illegal trade can be, even if it's not in something intrinsically harmful like drugs or guns. For many years, these countries were ignored, but the systematic ransacking in Iraq and Syria has catapulted this issue to the limelight. Magellan is all about the drama of real life, just like us at Cold Case Detective. They show the enduring quest for justice, detectives and victims who can never rest until perpetrators are caught, the lives of serial killers, and famous unsolved cases. This show highlights that the victim isn't always only one person. A crime can affect an entire country and take away something truly precious. Use the link in the description to get a month-long free trial and jump into the murky dealings in antiquities and discover what's being done to return these items to where they truly belong. And now, let's dive in with today's mysteries. LaQuanta Nachelle Riley. LaQuanta Riley was just 19 when she vanished in the winter of 2003. Tracing her movements in the months before her disappearance, investigators discovered that up until Thanksgiving, she had lived with a roommate in an apartment in Eufaula, Alabama. She had decided, however, to move out, waiting until December 5th to return to the apartment to collect her belongings. Later that day, she called her mother Pamela, while clearly upset, and asked for a lift to Montgomery. But Pamela was unable to collect her, leaving LaQuanta to make other arrangements. She moved in with her aunt and cousin in the 1500 block of Hill Street, Montgomery. LaQuanta was last seen by family members on December 7th, 2003 at around 11:30 p.m. when she left her Hill Street residence. After leaving the home, she entered the passenger seat of a green 4-door vehicle, which is described as possibly being a Ford Taurus or Chevrolet Caprice. The unidentified driver took the 19-year-old 3 miles to her mother's home. LaQuanta's brother was the one to answer the door. He asked her who was driving the car, and later told authorities that he didn't recognize the vehicle. LaQuanta claimed the driver was a friend she had met in the neighborhood, before asking to borrow a jacket. After she got into the car, she was never seen again. 3 days later, Pamela reported her daughter missing. She had left behind her handbag and money. At some point, either a few days or weeks after the disappearance, LaQuanta's mother found a message on her answering machine. The audio has never been made public, but it is reportedly unclear. Pamela claimed that her daughter's voice could be heard saying either, "Leave me alone," or "Let me go home." A man's voice in the background said LaQuanta's name, and the call cut off. It has never been traced. Over the years, there have been few leads in LaQuanta's case. One interesting lead, however, did arise at some point following her disappearance, when her name was used on an apartment rental in Stone Mountain, Georgia. The 19-year-old had attended high school in this same city. Pamela traveled to the apartment block and showed one resident a photo of Riley. He claimed she had lived down the hall and recently asked to borrow his phone following an altercation of some kind, but had moved out a few days before Pamela's arrival. Unfortunately, though it has been almost 2 decades since LaQuanta vanished, there have been no new, substantial updates in her case. It seems the authorities are no closer to solving her disappearance than they were back in 2003. LaQuanta Riley was 19 when she vanished from Montgomery, Alabama on December 7, 2003. She was last seen entering a green 4-door vehicle, possibly a Ford Taurus or Chevrolet Caprice. LaQuanta is described as an African-American woman with brown eyes and standing at 5'8". At the time of her disappearance, she had black hair and weighed around 200 pounds. She was also wearing a yellow and green Echo shirt, stone-washed blue jeans, green and yellow Reebok trainers, and a silver chain bracelet. LaQuanta has pierced ears and a pierced tongue, as well as a scar on her nose. She also has 2 tattoos, R.I.P. Misha tattooed on one bicep, and LaQuanta on the other bicep. She may use the nicknames Quana and Quanta. If she is alive, she will be 38 years old. If you have any information about LaQuanta's disappearance, you can contact the Central Alabama Crime Stoppers at 334-215-7867 or the National Center for Exploited and Missing Children at 800-843-5678. Khoi Dang Vu. Khoi Dang Vu was last seen at his family's home in Clark County, Washington on April 7, 2007. His family members recall seeing him sometime between midnight and 1 o'clock that night after his parents put him to bed, but he was discovered missing the following morning at 8 a.m. His bed did not appear to have been slept in, and he has not been seen or heard from since. Though Khoi was 25 at the time of his disappearance, he has the mental capabilities of a 10-year-old. Deaf since birth, he cannot speak and has very limited skills in American Sign Language, though he may use hand gestures and writing to communicate with others. At the time of his disappearance, he lived with his parents, sister, and brother-in-law. The family were planning a trip to Seattle to celebrate his mother's birthday, which they were due to leave for on April 8th. Khoi's family do not believe the 25-year-old left of his own accord because he was looking forward to the upcoming family trip. Furthermore, many of his favorite possessions had been left behind, including his jacket as well as his bicycle, which was his main means of transportation. While he sometimes left home, it was only ever for a few hours at most, and he never went out at night. Additionally, on the night of his disappearance, there was a heavy rainstorm in the area. Initially, authorities believed that Khoi had wandered away from home and possibly gotten lost. Later, on the day of his disappearance, the police brought in scent dogs to help track the 25-year-old's trail. The canines reacted to a smell just a few miles from the home, but it quickly went dead. Investigators also noted there were no signs of forced entry into the house. On April 8th, a woman watching a news report about Khoi called the authorities, believing she had seen the missing man earlier that day, as he had been playing basketball with her sons at the Ellsworth Elementary School. Notably, Khoi was a fan of basketball and enjoyed playing it. The woman recalled that she had given the man a bottle of water, which he had taken and consumed very quickly, but she didn't realize he needed help, as he never indicated he was in trouble, despite being capable of doing so. Following this tip, investigators took their scent dogs to the school, but like before, the trail quickly dropped off. Over the next few days, a massive search took place, which utilized law enforcement members on foot as well as trained divers. Detectives also interviewed local sex offenders, but nothing came from their efforts. the more time passed, the more authorities began to suspect that something sinister was afoot. They began to investigate Khoi's disappearance as a crime. On April 27th, detectives spoke with a person of interest. However, this individual has never been publicly named, and very little information is available on the initial investigation. Investigators now believe the 25-year-old was the victim of foul play, and that his body was put in a dumpster and ultimately wound up in a landfill near Boardman, Oregon. Still, there are no suspects in the case as of the writing of this video. It has also been noted that following his disappearance, Khoi may have traveled to Oregon, Vancouver, Washington, or elsewhere in Washington state. At this time, it is unknown what evidence there is that indicates why any of these situations are possibilities. Khoi is described as an outgoing young man who may approach anyone. He has the ability to purchase goods from a store and order food at a restaurant, often simply by pointing at items on the menu. He frequented the Albertsons grocery store in his neighborhood and may confuse other Albertsons stores in other areas with the one he is accustomed to. 25-year-old Khoi was last seen on April 7, 2007, at his family home in Clark County, Washington, sometime between 12 and 1 a.m. He is described as an Asian male who stands at around 5'5" and has brown eyes. When he was last seen, he had black hair and weighed around 118 pounds. While Khoi was born in Vietnam, he is an American citizen and cannot understand Vietnamese. His right arm and hand are slightly deformed. If he is still alive, he will be 41 years old. If you have any information about Khoi's disappearance, you can contact the Clark County Sheriff's Office at 877-274-6311. Ivon and Inisha Fowler. On June 20th, 2016, authorities visited the home of 47-year-old Patricia Fowler, the biological mother of twins Ivon and Inisha. At the time, she lived on Byron Street in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and law enforcement had instructions from the county's Department of Children, Youth and Families, otherwise known as the CYF, to take all of Patricia's children from her custody. She was currently under investigation for medical neglect of 4 of her offspring. All of them had serious medical conditions and had missed around 6 dozen appointments in total with doctors and specialists. While authorities removed all 4 children from the home, they were soon notified by the CYF that Patricia had 6 children in her care. The missing children, Ivon and Inisha, both of whom would have been 17 at the time, were never located. This ordeal was not Patricia's first time dealing with the CYF. On November 8, 2000, when Ivon was just 2, 46% of his body was severely burned. His mother claimed his older brother had accidentally scalded him in the bath. She didn't call an ambulance for Ivon until the following day, and he was hospitalized until December 13th. Following this, both Ivon and Inisha were taken from Patricia's care, but were returned within a few days. CYF failed to notify the police of the incident, but continued to maintain contact with the mother of 6. Details and circumstances around the children's disappearances are hazy at best. Their date of disappearance is listed as September 11, 2006, at which time they would have been 7 years old. However, their family members have not seen Ivon or Inisha since 2002 or 2003. Furthermore, 2 separate landlords who rented to Patricia between 2006 and 2015 never met Ivon or Inisha, believing they had never lived with her at all. Patricia, for her part, has not been forthcoming about the children's whereabouts, giving various accounts of their location, including that they were with friends or family and that they were in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, depending on which version of events she was telling. Eventually, Patricia stated she had sold the children to a woman named Barbara for $2,000 each, but she later retracted this claim when she was told it was illegal to sell a child. Then, in one particular interview with a Pittsburgh TV station, Patricia claimed that her friend, a woman supposedly called Cheryl Willis, had stepped in and helped and taken both Ivon and Inisha to North Carolina approximately 10 years back. She added that when the pair were 13, they moved to Georgia with Cheryl Willis. It is unclear if this woman's existence was ever verified. In August 2016, numerous charges were laid against Patricia, including endangering the welfare of children and concealing the whereabouts of children. Around this same time, her son, Datwan Fowler, who was 18, was charged with imitation and criminal conspiracy, among other things, after he admitted to police that he had pretended to be Ivon so he could message the police and claim that he and Inisha were in Atlanta, Georgia. He said he did this so the authorities would leave him and his mother alone. In May of 2017, a judge threw out most of the charges against Patricia so that only 3 remained. These included endangering the welfare of a child, unsworn falsification, and public assistance false statements. The judge claimed there was insufficient evidence that she'd harmed the twins or concealed their whereabouts from their father. Patricia pled guilty to the remaining charges and was sentenced to 4 years of probation. Additionally, she was ordered to pay $57,000 in restitution. This money was public assistance payments she had received for the twins, despite them no longer being in her care. As part of her plea agreement, the charges against her 18-year-old son were dropped. To this day, the whereabouts of Inisha and Ivon are still unknown. Neither child has been enrolled in school in Pennsylvania or other states. 2 of their siblings, including Datwan, recall that they vanished after being sick. Datwan claimed Ivon was sick one day, and when he awoke the next morning, Ivon was missing. Inisha followed shortly afterwards. Still, both Patricia and Datwan insist all the children are still alive. Both children are described as African Americans with black hair and brown eyes. Ivon likely has scars over 46% of his body, including his hands and face, from when he was burned at the age of 2. If you have any information about their disappearance, you can contact the Penn Hills Police Department at 412-798-2011. And there you have the facts. Please leave a comment down below with your own theories and speculations, and remember to like this video and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.